We are live, boys. Welcome everyone to the Truth for the People podcast. This episode, I've got my brothers on with me. My brother Narcis and my brother Alex. Thanks for joining me, guys.
For sure, man. It's I was even before on the first episode right after we finished, and I even said it before we started recording, but I was like, I love the process of the podcast for some reason. I don't know, and this is only my second time, but I love putting on the headphones. You got the sick mics. They're so clear.
The formality of it.
The formality of it,
is nice sometimes.
And I was like, even if no one's listening, I like...
Which there is. Based on what's been coming in.
300 views on the first one?
We're almost at 300 on the first one. Total
last time I heard it was 160 something, so 300.
Total is like 330 or 40
with
right
the
now.
Second one.
With the second one together.
We might have to add a total of $4 too. We were making bank.
Yeah, we're killing it.
Here.
But what I was saying, I wasn't saying that because no one's listening, because people are listening. But even if no one wasn't, it's just so chill. We're sitting here, we're talking, we're discussing. But like the formality of it, I like it.
After the podcast, I'll be honest, like I was a little giddy. I don't get giddy often.
I was too.
But I'm like,
yeah, me too.
I'm like, we did it, and it's like,
it was fun.
For some reason, I was very naive, but I was like, man, we're gonna make it big. but it's a long way.
I do think that to a certain extent we will, not necessarily like killing it, Joe Rogan, blah blah blah. But I do think that
within our community,
we're providing something that people are looking for these days, which is truth.
Yeah.
Well, we're not claiming to tell you like, hey, this is the truth. This is what you need to believe. That's not at all. What we're doing is just providing us a location, a spot, a platform where discussions can be had, which it's something that I've heard a lot recently of how just our country was founded based on debate, based on communication. And like everyone's looking
open
back,
forum,
right? And everyone's looking back at those founding fathers and saying it's insane how brilliant these people were. But it's not like one person came up with the Constitution,
right?
Otherwise, that person. Them, right? Otherwise, that person would have been a genius.
There was some big authors, like maybe, but
yeah. But I'm saying,
you know what the craziest thing?
It's not like one person presented, hey, like the Bible. God presented the Bible, or through people writers. Wrote the Bible, and it's like a perfect book. It's not like one person presented the Constitution. It was
a lot of minds.
I think James Madison wrote a lot of it, but yes, it was.
But maybe physically, but it was all them debating and coming up with the ideas together.
The craziest thing about the Constitution, and I think I heard this from brother Leonard Semenya from Seattle. You folks might know him.
We should have him on sometime.
We might. He'd be a good guest.
Yeah.
But, so obviously we don't always have the Constitution, Before that, I forget what it was. It was
before the Constitution.
Yeah.
From
was
England?
It just
it was a body of work that
the Federalist Papers. Or
no, see that's what I want to get to is that sorry folks, I'm having a brain fart personally, but the crazy thing is
where we could have used Lucci. So you know Lucci, you should have showed up.
He's hustling on the forklift though.
Jamie Jr.
But the Federalist Papers it was basically a dialogue where they would be published in the newspapers, I think, and then people would read them, and it would kind of talk about the Constitution, what they want to do, and it was with the new government and what's going to be included, and it was kind of like a high level of English, right?
And
it was very complicated, right? And the average, and Brother Leonard was saying that at that time, the average person in the United States was expected to read and understand it. And nowadays it's taught, like the Federalist Papers are studied at a master,
like law school.
Yeah. At a master degree level.
That's great. That's
how far we've fell.
Do you know what's interesting though?
That's kind of like religion and faith and the Catholic Church. Like nobody really reads the Bible that much in the Catholic faith. They all rely on priests and the Pope and whatnot.
Much more
to
the
interpret
Orthodox, I think.
Or in the Orthodox.
Even
Church.
the Catholics.
Yeah.
But do you know what's interesting? Because, Brother Leonard was saying too, there was no public school back then.
No.
It was all homeschooling.
It was all homeschool.
Which is blowing up right now.
Or private school.
Up until, obviously, collegiate level schooling.
Right. At that point, if you want to be a doctor, you're not going to study with Lima. A
lot of those guys, founding fathers, they were, Harvard educated and
I'm saying
Ivy League.
You want to go to med school, you got to go to med school. You wouldn't be going to med school at home.
Right. Well, you do your homeschooling as you're growing
up.
up.
There's only so much you can learn
at home. Up to the college level, whatever, at home, and then you move on.
Yeah.
That is a good point. So, one thing I wanted to say from how I like this formality of the podcast. It's like, and I think you mentioned it, Alex, before we started, that it like you feel like you're empowered, or empowered.
But
even though we're not, in a sense, like you're empowered because you feel like you have a voice, even though you might not have that big of a voice.
Yeah.
But it just like, it's nice because that, hey, for those 20, 30, 50, 100, 300 people that are listening, maybe you can impact them or help them or
influence
at
the
them.
very least.
Exactly.
It's definitely going to provide some level of influence, right?
For sure.
And hopefully a positive influence. You know?
And the difference with listening to a podcast that I find interesting is you listen and it's not a dialogue, right? The listener can't just say, I disagree, right? So he just takes it all in the podcast and it just kind of, and
he munches on
it. Thought, right?
Processes, yeah.
And I think that's a very, that's
very
good.
That's something I talked a little bit with Jonathan on the podcast last episode. Like for a lot of us, that maybe make like an hour drive or commute and whatnot, a lot of times you feel unproductive during that drive, and podcasts have become a way where people can ingest information or certain ideas or just like ponder on certain thoughts and
I think that's why
make use of idle time that you would otherwise be wasted.
And I think that's why podcasts have also blown up too, because it's not like people some people might do that, but it's not like people sit at home and do nothing and listen to podcasts all the time.
This is
it's on the road or it's at work or
what's
whatever.
What's really happening is people used to listen to the radio in the car, right? That was the big thing. Talk shows on the radio, music, whatnot. And just like when you get home, you watch TV. Everyone would turn on the TV. But nowadays, everyone's switching from TV to online stuff, YouTube, social media. And so that's what's kind of happening with the radio side of things / talk show. This is what everyone's turning to is podcasts.
Right.
And then if you want music, you just go to Spotify or wherever.
Yeah.
And you
even
turn
talk
on your
shows
music.
are different. Yeah. Because talk shows, if you look
they're not as raw as like.
Let's say.
Yeah, no, they're not. For sure.
If you look at any of the late night shows, they're actually.
They're like
there's only so much you can do.
Pre-recorded, man.
Yeah, and they're 10-minute okay. Someone comes on 10 minutes.
Ads every.
Hey, let's take a break for an ad break, and then not only that is like you can't genuinely talk. It just here's. It's always like, hey, there's a new movie coming out, and he's kind of doing like a media tour.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's not
like,
genuine.
Are you talking about Jimmy Fallon and all those guys?
Yeah, the late night show guys.
And all that's pre-recorded during the day. It's like
and even
they're not up at midnight.
And even if we're gonna compare it to like podcasts, for example, and go back to radio, like in radio, it's very produced as well, just like TV shows where you have producers and whatnot, and hey, you can't say that.
Right.
And all of a sudden, like
censorship.
They're censoring what you say, what you don't say.
Right.
And we see that kind of coming in a little bit on some podcasts. There's been some talk about the Joe Rogan podcast that people at Spotify
we mentioned that last time.
Yeah.
And so that it's kind of happening a little bit in podcasts, but it's even if it does happen to the degree, whatever degree it will, it's not going to be to the extent,
dude.
It can't be to the extent that it was in like radio.
A lot of times it happens by quote unquote selling out, right? Because Dave Chappelle, like, okay, you could argue, Joe Rogan, he sold out because he had $100 million deal now with Spotify. He signed that.
Allegedly.
And if you look back in, I think, early 2000s, I don't know too much about this, but I kind of watched a couple of videos about it. David Chappelle, he was offered at the height of his popularity, like an enormous amount of money for a comedian, right?
Yeah.
But he obviously when you're under contract, when you're doing that type of stuff, there was always some conditions, right?
Yeah.
And he felt that would hinder him, right? He wouldn't be able to be as artistically creative. Like he couldn't say what he wanted to say because there would be some level of censorship. He's like, you know what? I'm not even going to sign it.
Yeah, he
and
talked
that
about
always
that.
comes by quote unquote selling out.
Well,
I think.
and then he was
They're
like
not free.
he was off the radar for many years after that.
Yeah,
you
he
know?
left. Well,
now he's killing
he
it.
talked
kinda
about
back, yeah.
he kind of talked about that the stuff they were wanting him to do, he didn't agree with either. Like one thing he saw all the time was like an African American actor
playing a gay part
would
or
have
something.
to play like a gay or a female part or wear
They
a
were
dress
trying
or
to force
something.
that on him. I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
And
That's bad.
I don't know, like I don't remember exactly if he said that they were specifically trying to do that to him at that exact time, but he's seen that with all these guys that were coming on to, making it big.
And it was just some
And
like
it was
light,
only-
funny role.
And it was only after those roles that they really started to kind of blow up because marketing and so wise started to push their way.
The media tries to.
And that's something he's talked about. Like he was not going to do that. Like he's not
Right.
going to go to an extreme that he doesn't even believe in to try to make it big. And that's there's a bunch of something like that why
that's rare. It's like, especially like with Hollywood, but not even Hollywood, because
What's
we're
rare?
just humans.
what I'm going to say now, it's rare to stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And obviously
authentic,
we're
genuine.
outside of Hollywood, so we can, hark on Hollywood, but it's also for us. Like,
Yeah.
Well,
no, for
like,
sure. 'Cause
how hard is it for me to stay true to myself?
In every community, there's pressures,
Right.
and
Right.
there's norms.
Or even as a Christian, like I have to stay true to myself, even though there's all these attractions and temptations,
yeah.
So like you said, in any community, in any social sphere,
Or even like doing business, a lot of times you can just like cut corners, or at work you can
Because
just
everyone else
slack
is
here,
doing it.
slack there, and it's not anything major that everyone can see, or something like Dave Chappelle would have been doing on
Right.
TV, but it's still, like you're saying, not staying true to yourself.
and God can see that ultimately,
sure.
So that's what counts really. So yeah, staying true to yourself. So with this point, staying true to yourself, we were saying, like, look at this humble beginning, man.
This is as true as to oneself one could ever get.
The true, like we and especially you, Dennis, can't forget this.
Oh no, not at all.
Folks, the only thing that's premium about this setup is these marble coasters.
Yeah.
Everything
Which my
else,
wife donated, not
Yeah.
donated, but
but they're made in
Let us
India,
use.
and who knows how premium they are.
And that American flag right there.
Yeah,
Heck
but
yeah.
we got like a little
Can't beat
ghetto Chinese makeshift like lantern, but instead of paper, it's plastic.
It's a plastic
Well,
bag over the
if-
light, which is sick.
I posted a picture of
it.
this on Instagram, so if anyone wants to see it, head over to the Instagram
The
page.
video does the
Tell
video
'em-
capture it all?
No, it cuts out just so that certain things.
By the
are
way,
framed.
Yeah, it's humble beginnings for sure.
Tell them your Instagram so they know.
Yeah, it's just my full name, Dennis Ciot, on my Instagram.
Okay.
I've
You don't
turned
have
that,
a truth?
I thought it was Density 13 or something.
I changed it to just
okay.
my full name, and
Okay.
now I'm just gonna use that as my podcast page.
Well, another thing, the camera is propped up on a laundry. Firstly, it's on a Pampers box,
A laundry drying rack.
and that Pampers box is on a laundry drying rack. It's
And the
incredible,
phone is
man.
on the Pampers
The
box,
walls-
Yes.
but the phone is leaning on a tripod.
Yeah.
The walls
It's
are
not even using
on the
It's
tripod.
It's not even on the
It's
tripod.
incredible.
the walls are moving blankets that are held up to the what do you call them?
To the ceiling joist with
Yeah.
clamps.
With clamps.
And the blankets are like blankets that you use in like construction or something.
For moving.
Yeah, moving
moving
blankets.
Yeah.
It's truly.
And
Hey,
then
can you pass
Oh.
me the socata?
We were talking about advertisement right here.
yeah, except for
It's
just so
unpaid,
everyone knows, we actually are not endorsed or sponsored
Yeah.
by anyone other than Anchor at the moment.
But we do love this drink, Socata Alegria. It's made in
Alegria.
Romania.
It's an elderberry drink. It's carbonized, or I think I think you would say that's correct. Carbonized.
It's very popular at
Carbonated.
Romanian settings.
You can probably
for example,
find them.
weddings.
Yeah, you can find them at your local like international food, like multicultural food store.
Anyways,
They're good. It's good stuff.
that's that drink, points us back to our heritage, our roots,
Yeah.
And I know that's one thing you wanted to hit on eventually in this podcast is,
kind of where we come from.
that we're not born in Romania, but we're born here, but we're not fully Americanized.
And we're not even born in America. We were
born in Canada. Yeah, but North America.
Yeah, so just to kind of give a little bit of background in that area, our parents, obviously, for those who know and those who don't, they were born in Romania, and my dad wanted to come to the United States originally because his brothers were here, but he had some issues getting into America or something like that, and then so he ended up applying for Canada and moved over there. So Canada was like the second option.
Plan B.
Yeah, and our dad actually came here
In
87, I
it
think.
was before the revolution. Yeah,
Yeah, it was before.
And he did come. I guess both of our parents came legally, but he didn't flee the borders of Romania.
Yeah, my mom fled the borders of Romania.
He kind of did.
And then
they were
came as
trying
a
to stop
refugee.
us.
He fought against the communists, right?
And
But I'm saying ultimately he had to renounce his Romanian citizenship before he left.
he came
and then
without fleeing.
Yeah, but mom, she fled to Yugoslavia and she came
as a refugee.
Right?
So
that was a crazy story, and we'll get into that. We won't get into those details this podcast, but we'll have probably my uncle on.
Yeah,
he's a baller.
Who can talk and give more details and see, and he'll explain a lot more about the whole process of all that. But
yeah,
that was a pretty crazy story of them.
Pretty crazy. Yeah. They were about to die. About to get
hit by a ship,
ran over by a ship on the river, on the Danube River. But the purpose for them leaving was communism and
persecution,
religious persecution, and obviously political and economic reasons, and all of that. That's what
every aspect,
because that's what communism does.
Ultimately, they were just super poor
economically.
Crazy
rations.
rations.
I went there last summer, and I visited both where mom and dad is from. Dad was closer to, I guess you could say, the big city, Bistrița. But mom, she was kind of like, her community was like kind of isolated more in the mountains. Mm-hmm. And it still is like, in a lot of those areas, super impoverished, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing to work, nothing to do. And all the young people are gone abroad in Europe working because ultimately that's the only way to earn and make
a decent living in Romania,
unless the prospect of being a shepherd and
making cheese up in the mountains,
having goats and living in more of a how would you say,
humbled
agrarian or agricultural lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like we have one aunt that still lives there, and mom's I saw her. She has some goats, some sheep. And
she kind of lives off the fat of the land. And
she lives off the fat of the land on Facebook. She goes nuts on Facebook.
Well, our uncles and aunts and stuff from here help her out. They send her money and whatnot. But
and so
it's tough.
Ultimately, they ran from communism,
but communism
which is like the ultimate.
Followed them though.
Yeah, it seems like communism is following them. That's like the ultimate point to where socialism gets to.
Yeah, that's the apogee. That's the height.
Speaking of that, Biden last night in the debates, what did he say? I think he straight up said that and Trump said, you just lost the left or the far left, because he said about the Green New Deal. That was like a very Bernie AOC like thing where I didn't even know the details, but when they said 100 trillion, too bad our Jamie's not here to confirm that if it was truly 100 trillion.
That's what I've heard even before when the Green Deal came out.
But
it was 100
he
trillion.
said, Biden said, I have my own plan. It's not
that
the Green New Deal.
He kind of denounced the Green New Deal.
So he lost them, and then
I don't know if he truly lost them, because that's kind of outrageous.
He could
some of them at least.
He could just be playing politics, which I would not be surprised.
Well, here's the other thing.
Here's the other thing. Disclaimer: I missed almost all the podcasts because last night
the debate.
The debate. I missed almost the entire debate. I only saw like the first 5 to 10 minutes. Because some crazy drunk lady drove into our van that was parked on the side of the street. It was nuts.
I heard about that, man.
Getting back to the debate, I also heard that. So he lost. He kind of by saying that denounced that.
You could say, I don't know how,
and
that
there's
will
something that
out.
I saw that he lost, and even though he never had anybody on the right really, by saying that he's going to get rid of Donald Trump's tax cuts.
Yeah.
And then I saw Trump go, good. Yeah, good.
Thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
You just helped me.
Well, I think if you look at Donald Trump's tax codes, the majority of like individual like income tax, the majority of the cuts were for people that were making, let's say if you're married, I think it was under 180 grand.
Yeah.
So you had some bigger, more substantial tax cuts there, if I'm not mistaken. But above that, there wasn't really that much.
Which is funny because the fake news mainstream media will tell you the opposite, that it was for the rich people. You know?
Yeah. And also,
which he did bring down the corporate tax. I think,
I don't understand why there's such a big hatred toward people who are so rich. Really.
That's what we kind of touched on last podcast with Jonathan. Like one thing Jonathan was saying, and as I was saying, is like you look at a lot of those people, not like you want to be them, but like one day
an inspiration.
It would be nice. Yeah, it'd be nice to attain some sort of level of
financial success
as they are.
Like the reality is,
to some extent.
The reality is like Jeff Bezos. I don't know how much his wealth fluctuates so much. What is it? Over 160 billion. His wealth, for the most part, is the only reason why we know he's that rich. And maybe there's richer people in the world, but
we just don't know.
Their wealth might be private. But the only reason why we know he's the richest is because he has like 18% stock. He owns 18% of Amazon, and that's a publicly traded company. You look at the market cap, 18% of the market cap is how much. If you were to sell all his shares, he would have that much cash.
Yeah.
Right. But that is because that man built that company, and that company is kind of
ground up,
all based on Jeff Bezos. Yeah. And even if you look at Tesla's a lot of these companies, I think, would be nothing, not nothing, but they would not be nearly as successful.
They wouldn't even exist.
They would not be as big as they are if they didn't have these guys leading and at the helm.
Well, they wouldn't even exist if these guys never even took the initiative and the risk to start it.
But if you look at, let's say, who will the future successor be to Musk and Bezos? Right, who's going to be the next people?
Kind of like what happened with Apple.
I was going to say Apple.
Apple's still
Steve
doing
Cook.
well.
They're doing well.
But but
everyone says that Apple has changed big time since
Steve Jobs.
They're not as innovative.
Do you know why though? Because no one's gonna take care of your child like you will.
Exactly.
No one's going to take care of Apple like Steve Jobs was taking care of it, right?
Yeah. Steve Jobs did what he did because he had passion for the product his child. And what he was doing.
That was his kid.
Everyone else that is going to take care of it cares about the bottom dollar.
Right.
Yeah, but like I was saying,
they might not have the vision that he had or the inspiration or
which
creativity.
Isn't necessarily always a bad thing.
Right.
What are the investors going to think? We need our numbers to go up next quarter.
Which I'm sure Steve Jobs was
I mean,
looking at that too.
Obviously, you have to try to be as profitable as you can. But
yeah,
like
you don't want to be a losing company for sure. But the point is that they care about their passion.
It's hard to have a good plan of succession, right? It's hard to ensure that after these guys who really built their companies, Bezos, Musk, it's hard to know if they're going to be as successful or if they're going to be as big, right? So these guys are as rich as they are because they're hustling. Their company is just centered on them, and I mean, rightfully so. They're as rich as they are.
Yeah,
they're as rich as they are because
capitalism, man.
People see the value in the company
for sure. And like you said, capitalism, kind of tying back to what we were talking about, because we still gotta evolve that a bit more.
Well, this actually came from
Romania.
Yeah,
coming to Canada.
We're not true capitalists here. Sadly,
we're not.
Though.
We're not, but we're the closest.
We're the closest. You can't have pure capitalism, or I don't think you can attain pure capitalism.
If you guys ever get the chance, someone told me to, a friend of mine told me to listen to the Joe Rogan Peter Schiff podcast. I don't know if you guys have listened. I
listened to the whole thing.
I listened to some of it.
That's a very good one. And this Peter Schiff, for those who don't know who he is an
economist.
He's an economist. He's in the top 1%, right?
Yeah.
And when the whole Occupy Wall Street movement was happening at the beginning of the 2010s, this guy, I just want to say that those protests were true protests. They were actually peaceful.
Yeah.
They were the start of, I think.
Just a side note.
Start of,
the socialist movement.
Yeah, what led to things to become more violent. But he had it on his heart to go out and actually speak to those people. And at the time, you could discuss with them. So he went out and he told them, hey, because I think Occupy Wall Street, they were mad that the government was bailing all these people out, right? And they were saying the companies shouldn't accept it. Well, he was saying that, it is the government's fault for actually making all the money available, right?
Yeah. It's not the company's fault.
And he kind of said, and he was kind of showing, and if you listen to the Joe Rogan Peter Schiff podcast, he really kind of opens your eyes. One thing it opened my eyes was with, our economy.
It's not pure capitalist.
It's not true. It's not
a true capitalist.
It's not true, but it's not as capitalist as it should and could be.
Yeah.
Right.
And he also talks a lot about...
Because of these government bailouts as well, right?
Yeah.
If a company is sinking, let it sink.
Yeah.
Because that hinders...
It needs to. That's part of the cycle.
Right.
Just like
that hinders
nature has
innovation.
a cycle.
Yeah.
If you look at... honestly, Chrysler and GM should have went into the ground because they just don't make as good cars as,
Ford maybe, or
Honda.
Or
even some European companies.
Because Ford stayed afloat.
If you make crappy cars, why? Because if they were making good cars,
they upped their game though after that,
It's still not.
They kind of, they're
but I'm just saying,
better than before, but still.
They go down, and as much as you could say that there are...
The point is that once they go out of business, it creates a
space,
a space, an opening for other... Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It creates a space for another company, another corporation eventually to take its place, or multiple companies, and that's the beauty of capitalism.
It could be, it could have been existing car companies. It could have been new car companies. Right. Hopefully it was hard to know what would have happened.
You think that, in the car business and making cars, it's so hard to start a new one, and it is because these companies are so well established. But then look at Tesla. Tesla just boom. But then again, a lot of capital. Musk had the capital.
And they're still not. I don't know how they're doing with their profitability because I honestly
probably not the greatest.
From what I know,
I don't know.
I don't follow Tesla much. What I do know is they're probably way overpriced. Like if you look at their worth. They're worth more than, from what I think, GM, Ford, even Toyota combined, or I think it's the big three combined, or some other companies. Like
it's because their stock was valued at so
Yeah, but I'm saying it's kind of
hyper traded. I don't know how to.
It's kind of, I think, over inflated. The Tesla price.
It is. I think. Maybe in the future
I think Ford's worth $25 billion, and Tesla, last I checked, was like 350. And they don't make, their output of vehicles is not as great. And, they do have a very big leap and a very big jump in EVs and their battery technology and all that. But
Tesla?
Yeah.
The technology's there. They have the technology.
But still,
but Tesla has
what they're currently doing is not, they're not selling in as great volumes as, they're not doing too well on profit as other companies are too.
Yeah, but the one thing Tesla has over Ford and GM and some of these other American cars is the hype.
Definitely.
The hype Tesla has
is insane.
That's why their stock went over 2,000, and then they did the stock split, and it's at like 400. I haven't checked in a while.
Sorry if I'm echoing something you guys already said. I had to...
His phone.
I had to run...
the humble beginnings, guys.
Yeah, I'm doing the young Jamie portion of this podcast as well as being on the podcast.
Yeah. Anyways,
but yeah,
getting back to growing up.
Yeah, Dad got to Canada. Mom made it to America, and then They ended up getting married, and mom moved up to Canada.
Yeah.
Since that's where dad was.
We were all born and raised there.
We're all born and raised there in Kitchener. Shout out to our family out there.
Yeah. Love you guys. Miss you guys.
Yeah, I was talking with a few of them that listen to the podcast. The first episode, some of them listen to the second as well.
You have to give a shout out to the friends too.
Friends.
Yeah, friends.
Yeah.
You know,
thanks for listening, supporting.
You know, it's interesting.
But we miss you guys. Yeah. Without a doubt.
For sure. Thinking about some people in Canada before we moved, I remember there was a few of them that like, oh, you guys are gonna be back in a year. You guys are gonna regret it. Blah blah blah. Never moving back there.
I would never go back to Canada.
Yeah, I'm done with that.
You could.
I love it here.
You could beat me with a hockey stick, and I wouldn't move back.
I love it here, man.
I think what happens is, not that I think, I know, it's that you don't know what you don't have.
Yeah.
Until you have it.
I remember that we would when we were living in Canada, we'd debate with our cousin Gabi or whatever.
Yeah.
Shout out to Gabi. Love you if you're listening ever.
Yeah, we would debate and argue with him all the time about how much better Canada is than America.
And then
we have free healthcare.
Yeah.
It's like the worst argument ever.
So we move here, we taste the good life here. Not that I wasn't a good life there, but
right.
America's better. Anyways, and then we're arguing with some of our friends back there that we're the Gobbies now.
Why America's better now.
I don't think there's much arguing anymore.
No, not now. I mean, it was more at the beginning.
Yeah, but I'm saying like,
hey, even at the place that we are as America right now, it's still better.
I'm saying there's not much arguing because I think if you were to ask them about the move and everything, they would all say it was the right thing. Like we made the right move at the right time.
Yeah,
and they
honestly,
a lot of them say,
at least from
it
our
would
family.
be nice.
Honestly, the perfect time. You know what's interesting? Dad always tells me this about how God blessed him. You guys probably already know what I'm gonna say. When we moved here, 2010, sometime in 2010.
Yeah, it was
apparently
the end of August, beginning of September.
But when he exchanged the money, I don't know when exactly he did it. It was like basically 1-to-1. The U.S. and Canadian dollar didn't lose anything.
Yeah, because now it's like
it hasn't been before that or after that like that.
Yeah, I know. It's back to it's like 75, 80.
So
I haven't looked at it.
It's kind of crazy how that's a blessing from God.
Yeah.
You're bringing so much over. You sold your house. You sold everything you had. And you're not losing 200 G's or whatever.
To seek the treasure in the field, right?
Yeah. This is the promised land, the earthly one, but see, not really.
One thing I kind of touching on that. I listened to a little interview between Patrick Bet-David and Jonathan Kahn.
Okay. The Jewish guy.
Don't know either of them.
Jewish guy.
Yeah, with the Harbinger.
Okay.
Things.
Yeah, I know that Pat David guy.
He was saying that America was built as like Israel 2.0, as like a new Israel.
Like the Gentiles. For the Gentiles.
Yeah. So,
kind
of connecting with that, but kind of making America a little bit of an Israel, so to speak.
Hey, the conspiracy theorists will say it was the Freemasons, though. So which one is it?
A bit of both.
Bro, me personally.
Hey, wherever good comes, evil follows and tries to destroy.
That's true.
That's always the thing. But back to what I was gonna say. One thing that kind of like clicked in my mind is kind of the path and journey. I'll look at Dad because Dad had to go to Canada first. The path and journey he took, and where he ended up choosing to be. Like he left Romania because communism was horrible.
That's scary though, to leave everything.
It is, but imagine how horrible life was for him to choose to, hey, I'm just going to leave.
It's scary, but
like life sucked.
You're starting from zero.
You honestly didn't have much.
But you kind of had zero there.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, you had family and that's it.
But
nobody had riches over there.
You're coming to a foreign land, foreign language.
Yeah.
Like the whole system, the culture, the way things work is like completely different.
And so he left Romania and he came to Canada.
Yeah.
Which is one step closer to the capitalism or like
America, where people dreamed of going.
Actual freedom. Yeah, all that. And then that also wasn't quite 100%. Like it was much closer, but it wasn't quite 100%, and we ended up in America.
Yeah,
which is still not perfect by any means.
Absolutely.
You know what I was thinking though? That it's very interesting because both of our families, maternal and paternal sides, is so I think Dad is a family of 9. There's 9 kids, including himself, and I think Mom is like 12, if I'm not mistaken. And we have a very unique, experience because all my dad's siblings are in either Canada or the United States, and all of my mom's siblings, except for one sister, are in the United States. And if you ask any other family, especially in the Romanian community that we're part in, they always have my dad is the only one who moved, or there's like 3 out of like. But I'm saying very rarely do you have, and I don't think I've come across like the entire family, maternal and paternal. Yeah, it's like, hey, I have all my family.
Majority here. Of almost like 99% of all of our families here. Yeah, obviously not super extended in the sense of like all our aunts and uncles and their kids. Yeah, except for one aunt.
Yeah, I'm saying
we're not talking about the cousins of our parents or something like that.
Yeah,
or great aunts.
Yeah, our parents' immediate family. Yeah, but that is, I think that's pretty interesting.
There's almost always some family that's, I still have, my parents are still in Romania, or, my brother or my sister or whatever. They still have at least like a sibling or a few other.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Or a few more.
We don't really. That's what's kind of crazy.
I was thinking about this whole us growing up, like we're not fully Americanized, North Americanized, Canadianized, whatever you want to say, but we didn't grow up, or we weren't born in Romania, so we don't have the pure Romanian culture, but we don't have the pure American either. We have kind of a mix.
Like when you go to Romania. I was in Romania. They cut that pork for you, that pig.
The pig.
And they give you some șoric. It's called pork rinds or whatever. And they're eating galore that șoric.
But they eat that stuff pork. Like almost raw.
Yeah, but I'm saying
no one does that here.
But I'm saying you go there and like you're like, I personally when I went, it's like when I went to Romania, it's like I felt very American. Like you go there and you realize how American you are.
Yeah.
I'm sure
it's weird.
I'm sure you probably didn't feel like you fit in at all.
No, I mean I did because I was cracking them jokes and the honeys and the ladies.
You do to an extent because the language, you know the culture,
and you know the cuisine because Mima cooks it at home,
and you know the culture through your parents. You don't firsthand know the culture. You know it secondhand.
Let's say if you were like to move there and live there, you wouldn't feel like you fit in.
No, that's what I'm saying. You go there and you feel like very American because you're like,
but then
so weird. Like,
do you feel fully American here? Like I don't feel fully.
But I've gotten to a point where I do.
I mean, I do because I grew up here, but I know that there's so many things different from me than the typical American because of
you kind of have to be Romanian. Careful with the whole typical thing because there is no typical Romanian either.
All right, I'm talking about like the average.
So if you find you can find Americans that are just like you.
I think if you felt if you were in the evangelical American community, like if you went to a church, I think you would feel.
Or at least you'd find some people there.
Like
not everyone, but you'd
Baptist
find some people.
Church, you'd feel at home.
Yeah,
right?
Because that's the other thing that differentiates us. Not only the fact that we're Romanian, but we are
the way we believe.
We are Christians.
Romanian Pentecostal is different than American Pentecostal.
Yes,
big time.
Honestly, I was thinking about this. Romanian Pentecostal, I would,
even though I hate names.
Yeah, I would put it like this: Bapticostal, for the American culture, the American church to understand. Because we're not like those crazy hyper charismatics,
right?
The American Pentecostals, and even worse, get to the New Apostolic Reformation.
Benny Hinn, let the bodies hit the floor. Shut up, watch that on YouTube.
And the NAR movement and false doctrines and all that. I'd like to hit on that on another episode. Do like special on that
for sure.
But we're not that, but we're not like we're kind of Baptists, like Southern Baptists in a sense, like traditional, conservative, Orthodox, meaning like, traditional.
And this
but we have
theology.
that Pentecostal side where we believe in the gifts of the Spirit and the charismatic gifts of the Spirit and the manifestation.
And
this
is more the Romanians here in America.
Yes.
They kind of held on to what they came here with.
Yeah.
But if you go back to Romania, like Alex was saying, there's still probably a small amount of churches that are like that.
What?
Like more traditional Romanian belief.
You don't even know.
But
I wanted to go to a church.
I think there's a lot of churches in Romania that have, for lack of better terms, how Romanians say, have Americanized.
I wouldn't say a lot, but there. No. But yes, there. I think there are.
You know what's sick?
There are
the super conservative churches.
I haven't been, so I can't say.
Like there was a church I wanted to go to that my buddy was telling me about, and they require all the women to wear headscarves tied at the neck, like that's
under the chin.
Under the chin, like that's the requirement.
Like 3
and
knots.
Like heck, that's where I need to go. Or there's another church I know of. I have some buddies who are from here. And I'm gonna just say it because they're gonna like it in Todirești and Iași. Like this is a church, I'm told, where they don't believe in instruments. Like you go there, there's no instruments.
Yeah,
you can't even bring the grace machine of the accordion.
Which is so interesting because that's literally against Scripture.
Yeah, it is.
But one thing I wanted to mention with what you said, like some of the churches in Romania, and I kind of look at some more well-known churches. I follow them on YouTube here and there, some of them, they've Americanized more. Mm-hmm. And, even looking at the Romanian Pentecostal churches here in the States and Canada, how they've Americanized more.
To a certain degree.
I think I
feel like less here because they almost turned it into a cultural thing.
What do you mean by Americanized?
Yeah, that's true.
Like started right instead of like maybe they don't have ora de rugăciune or in English like the first
time of
hour
prayer,
of prayer,
yes.
which a lot of Romanian churches have here.
Where it's just like an exhortation and then prayer.
Yeah, the first hour of church is mainly dedicated.
Just more solely to prayer.
More specifically for prayers. There's still a little bit of singing, a little bit of
song in between and like an exhortation.
Song, exhortation, prayer.
It's more focused on prayer time.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. The other is kind of starting off church in a worship.
Are you talking about what is Americanized?
An Americanized church.
Okay.
Like a worship sesh at the beginning of service. And then
maybe add some lights, even some fogs sometimes.
Stroboscopes and fog light.
That doesn't necessarily mean Americanized because you can have that without the lights and the fog.
It says the glory of the Lord filled the temple, so I think that's what they're trying to get with the fog machines.
See,
it's biblical.
Hold on, and then maybe some announcements, whatever, and then the main sermon. And then maybe a little bit of worship.
There's no choir. There's no band. There's none of that. It's kind of the worship team and that's it.
Or they'll incorporate like a band, like a small band and some choir into like the worship session at the beginning.
Do you know what's weird about that?
That's what I mean by like a little bit Americanized.
I always find it weird,
which is not a bad thing.
There's never a hard transition, because even in the American style of worship, right? There's never a hard transition.
It's always slow
into like prayer, right? There's never a definitive transition. It's kind of like
you're flowing in and out.
You sing a song and it just kind of morphs into,
and then it morphs out of.
Like they sing a song and then like the synthesizer's going on in the background, right? And you just hear this lady.
And you're in a trance.
Glory.
And you're in a trance.
And then like you kind of get the point. Hey, we're praying now.
We're praying now,
right?
And then suddenly the music goes a little louder. Like it's not just the
and then the synthesizer, and then you hear
it's the guitar
the electric
now.
Like play the accord, and then it's time to sing.
The drums start coming in. And
I don't know what
I guess you could say it's definitive.
I don't know what American church you guys are going through because I haven't seen synthesizers.
The keyboard. That's
all right.
It's not a standard
One thing
keyboard.
I wanted to say with this, I don't like the Romanian church morphing into that.
Okay.
And it's slow. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do we have to do it like that? I'm not saying that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's like the Africans, they worship how they worship. The Romanians are not going to worship how the Africans worship. They won't.
Right.
Right? But I'm not saying like having some of that is I don't like, because some of that is okay. I like that hour of prayer. You know, I think it's necessity, man. Do you know one thing that I noticed? Something that I'm so glad you brought that up with, you know, worship and then, we're praying now? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Weird.
So like, you know, I've been to like some youth services and whatnot during the week at some bigger churches. Exactly like how it is at an American church, you know, dim the lights even, and if they could have lights and fog, they would have it, which I'm against. Anyways, so they're singing, they're all like hands up, worshiping, like
feeling the music.
Feeling the music. It's just emotion. It's not the spirit.
There are churches, like even in the American church and even in Romanian churches, where it's either emotion driven or like religious practice driven.
Yeah.
And
I'm doing it because everyone else is doing it, or
both are. If it's solely emotion or solely like religious practice, they're equally bad.
So my point is this. You know, you look at them, hands up, worshiping, closed eyes, they're feeling it. It's like it's the spirit. And then it morphs into that prayer. But they're on fire when they're singing. It's like, man, these guys they're close to God. They're strong. And then it morphs into that prayer. It's 30 seconds. You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes, right?
I'm not saying all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not. Maybe there are more powerful prayers. I don't know. And I'm sure there is. But that tells me something, man.
Well, you also have to think about like making a distinction between, and this is how I understand why in like the American churches, they don't do like hardcore hour-long prayer sessions.
Because there's that other aspect too, where those prayers are dead.
Because
there's that other aspect. Yeah.
And the reason they do it is because they see church as a time of fellowship. So where together as a body, you bring praise to God, spread some food to the people, so to speak, in regards to spreading the word, spiritual food, and then spending that, fellowship time together and going home. That's kind of what the church was like, or that's what churches. The main purpose of church is for the fellowship,
to glorify God and to edify one another
together,
right? And fellowship, of course, together.
Right. It's all about doing it in fellowship. Otherwise, you could do that all at home if you're not fellowshipping.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
And so then that's how they see, like, hey, you build your prayer life at home. And then we can also have services where there's prayer service, like the church I go to Tuesday nights, 7:00, it's prayer service, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
I mean, there is some singing, just like there is during the hour.
Of course.
But they don't make that like a Sunday thing. Mm-hmm. That's on Tuesday. If people want to do like a corporate
because
prayer or intercession.
I definitely think the focus of a service, let's say on a Sunday service especially, the focus needs to be the sermon, right? What's going to be
kind of like
the word. I'm saying the word has to be at the center.
That is central, and that's the main, I guess you would call it the main event of the night, right?
It's not the worship. Everything's worship. I mean, I don't like when people say, let's worship God, and that's just singing. Worship is praying. Worship is the word.
Yeah, it's all of it
But
together.
it's not the main event, and we shouldn't call it event, but we can call it that for...
I was doing it in like a wrestling, a fighting sense, right?
Right. It's not the songs. It's the word.
UFC way.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I don't like. Like, there's an hour of songs, and then because there's no time at the end, it's like a 15-minute little message. Dude, I need some meat.
Like, I don't know.
And the preacher's got to prepare.
Once again, I'm not sure where you've been, but where we're at, we have...
I'm saying generally, I'm not picking on... I mean, even at our church sometimes happens. That happens, There's like a 15-minute...
Well, like you're saying, it's going to vary. Some Sundays more, some Sundays less.
Yeah.
Typically, what I've seen where we're at, we have that... We have like a 20, probably close to a 30-minute worship session.
Okay.
And then word usually lasts like at least 45 minutes.
Yeah, solid word.
Do you know what sucks the most?
In any church, when you have bad preachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks.
Who don't prepare.
I would say that sucks the most. The second most thing that sucks, or the second thing that sucks the most is let's say you go to a worship night or you go wherever, and you could say there was an outpouring. Let's say one could
label it as that.
One could argue there was an outpouring
of the Spirit.
There was a show, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Of the Spirit. Okay.
Right.
So at least that's what it seems like you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
And then things died down, but then they keep on going, and things die down, and it's like, let's do an encore of the songs, let's find a song that's as repetitive as possible, and just sing that over and over. And then when that's over, let's do another one. Right. Yeah. And it's just like at some point you got to know to call it quits.
This is kind of how what I feel now. About that. This is kind of what I feel about that.
Don't keep me standing.
I feel like this is how I understand that. I feel like that happens more in a Romanian church that's really trying to do the American worship thing.
Right.
Well, you could say.
Probably because we don't know that much about the American church. Maybe you do more. But you've only been to a few, right? So
right, and none of them have done super repetitive. Just repeat this one chorus over and over. And over
I'm just saying. Okay, yeah.
We're maybe you're kind of exaggerating, but I know what you're trying to say.
No, but the songs a lot of times are very repetitive
and superficial.
Well, not that. It's not the songs that are repetitive.
I'm saying the songs can be repetitive, and
the guy leading worship can decide, hey, we're just going to repeat the chorus and the verse over and over again.
And maybe that's the whole structure of the song. Like there's a lot of Hillsong, Elevation, all these songs out there that are very repetitive.
A lot of these newer songs though aren't. They have like almost like a story. When you look at the lyrics on paper, it almost looks like a not essay, but
the only thing I've seen for those is song like artists like City of Light, the Gettys, Sovereign Grace Music.
For all of you who want some worship music, write these down.
Solid artists. Yeah. And we're going to get into this on another episode where I want to hit on this.
Yeah, we need to move on from this topic.
Either way, one last thing and then we can move on from this topic. Hillsong, Elevation Worship, Jesus Culture, stay away from that.
Take what's good, leave what's bad.
Yeah, it's poor theology, shallow theology. If you want to be more mature in Christ and grow, you need some meat in the songs too. You need to sing theology.
They sound nice, but always check go through the lyrics, not just quick, like, hey, that looks like that's good. There's no swearing.
And then who's the source? Hillsong, Jesus Culture, Elevation Worship.
But study it against the word.
Well, study the church, study the pastor, study the teachings. Yeah. And I know a lot of young people are going to be very...
Even in those situations,
they're not going to like what I say.
Good,
do you know what's good? Leave what's bad. Do you know what's an artist that you can always trust 100%? You know that it's right.
I know it's some Romanian solid.
Okay. All these guys.
Solid
for our American.
Solid
for our, for our English speaking listeners. If there's enough, noise made, you might find me translating those. Just because they're just bangers.
Yeah.
And
solid theology too. They tell a story. Anyways, let's move on because we want to keep that for... This was just kind of a teaser for another episode that
we'll be continued.
Yeah.
But back to America, Canada, Romania.
Bro, why do we have to keep on going back there?
We always veer off though,
But what I was going to ask you guys. You guys are like I felt like we did that in the first episode. Hey, we talked about our roots kind of, but
kind of, but not really in the first episode.
What do you want to get to? How you got an in-school suspension in 7th grade or
honestly, there's not too much to say. I mean, there's a few things that you could say.
No, it's to talk about. See, one of the biggest issues that everyone's dealing with today in society is what is happening with all these people calling for change. That they've been calling for since Obama, but now they're like getting violent about it. And where we've come from, Romania to Canada to here, because what America stands for and the fact that they're all trying to change America now. And there's Romanians falling into the trap too. Like when the whole Black Lives Matter thing happened with George Floyd.
A lot of people post up.
Dude, everyone was putting up this Black Lives Matter, black image Romanian on their
Christian
Instagram.
Community.
Yeah, come who I'm talking to.
I'm like, come on, guys. Come on.
Like, everyone just kind of jumped on the wagon, which I understand. Everyone kind of felt bad about what happened with George Floyd. The moment we all saw, without knowing exactly of all that happened, we all thought it was a horrible thing. Every single one of us. I I doubt anyone was like, oh, he deserved
on
it.
face value. If you don't know that he was high on fentanyl,
that's all I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's obviously kind of heartbreaking.
And so everyone just jumped on their emotions and posted this Black Lives Matter thing, not even looking into what is Black Lives Matter. Like one thing I argued with one guy on Facebook. I said one thing I argued with a guy on Facebook is like, I agree with the words.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
With the actual physical words,
the slogan,
the literal
Black
words.
people's lives do matter. They do, but that slogan in and of itself is racist.
Right.
Because there's a color in front of lives matter.
Right. It should
that
just be
makes it
all
racist.
lives matter.
Right,
but now that's racist.
Right. And if you don't want something to be racist, then you don't look and focus on
you don't
a
put
color
the emphasis
of a person.
on race. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone was doing. And I'm criticizing the Romanian culture right now for doing that.
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
That's
like,
so
I didn't even get close. I didn't even get close to posting those black images because I know what Black Lives Matter stands for.
Yeah.
I know where their money's going. I know where like all the donations they make.
They don't go to Black Lives.
They don't go at all. They go to Bernie.
Black communities.
They go to Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden.
Yeah. The Democratic Party.
They go to
if you want to get into
school
the conspiracy,
teachings.
George Soros, no?
Yeah, we can go
absolutely.
there.
No, but I want to say that personally, I try not to use social media much, but
just to look up girls.
That's another thing.
If you're single,
if you're single and you don't have Instagram, you don't exist, right?
Yeah.
That's something else though. But I think it's kind of dumb to be so political on social media, right? If you find me just putting tons
especially
whatever,
like
whatever
impulsively,
it might be.
especially impulsively.
Not only that, it's like, hey, if me, Alex Ciot, Alex Ciot, if he was just gonna put stuff online about, always something happens, oh, Trump this, Trump that, or Biden this, it's like, do I honestly think people will care? Like, what kind of change is gonna result in people knowing where I stand on things or hearing my opinion? It's just like, honestly, they could care less, and I could care less when all these other people are just talking about their own political opinion on social media.
Honestly, I don't post anything. The only thing I post is this podcast, which I did for the first episode. I tried doing it for the second,
which can get political.
But we don't want this podcast, and I'm sure you don't.
It's not
the focus
politically
isn't
centered.
political, right?
It's not politically
That's
centered.
why we're
on
talking
everything.
about all types of stuff, and it would be a burden, honestly, to come every time on the podcast and talk about Biden, Trump, COVID,
or politics,
or politics.
Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah,
For sure.
I mean, obviously, that's part of life. It has its place to discuss, but that's not what the focus is. There's so many other things to discuss and talk about, and life is so much more than politics.
Yeah, but
life
the thing,
so
do you know
much
what the sad thing
complex.
is that
Politics influences.
Life is so much more, but it's causing such divide now, politics, right? Well, where you stand on the political spectrum, you're judged, and it doesn't matter. Like, you could be right wing, you could be left wing. You have preconceived notion of how this person is because of where his ideologies lie.
5-6 years ago, didn't matter as much.
Yeah.
A lot has changed.
That kind of goes. That's kind of tied to this whole like Black Lives Matter movement. Kind of started with the Occupy Wall Street, like you were talking about. Or this push towards some sort of socialism, where it's just a small group that's really loud.
Yeah,
that's all that is.
Vocal minority.
Yeah, it's not even close to even half of half. It's not even close to a quarter of America.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say, but they're just really loud.
Because it's very interesting now. From what I've seen is Kamala Harris, Joe Biden.
Otherwise, they would have won a
Pelosi,
Democratic nomination.
Even theirs denouncing the violence, right?
Sometimes.
Well, now they are because they're in the spotlight. It's the debate.
That's what I'm saying.
A little late.
You were talking about a vocal minority, and I think it is a vocal minority, and I think these people are kind of waking up, and they're realizing that they're going to lose a big percentage of the votes if they endorse it, or if they're okay with it, they don't say anything about it, right? Yeah. Rather than saying, hey, it's wrong, because it clearly is.
Politics. There's no sincerity, man.
Right. It's all
politics is dirty.
It's all on emotion once again.
Dirty. Oh, that's one thing.
This is all emotionally driven.
That's what Biden was doing the whole time last night. You,
Yeah.
the American voter at home, just like relax.
appealing
man.
to the voter. Just. Anyways, one thing that you hit on, and it's connected to what we were discussing with the church stuff and the singing and all that. It for me, it seems like it's not just a political. It's church. It's kind of a lot of aspects of life. You can be emotionally driven, and that's dangerous. Be it in the church, be it politically with BLM. Like everyone, like you said, in our community, you see this person, that person, like tons of people posting BLM.
Yeah.
All emotion.
Yeah.
There's no logic. There's no research. There's no, let's take a breath. Like this is the fast food culture, right?
It's
Boom,
either
post it up.
It's either emotion,
research.
the people kind of driving it. It's either that there's emotion.
It is very emotional.
It is very emotional.
Or for other people that are hopping on, it's just about being a part of something.
Yes. So
I want to be a part of this.
I was honestly dumbfounded after the whole George Floyd situation that the amount of traction and the amount of adoption that BLM got. Like the NFL, NFL said, "Hey, we were wrong. We apologize for what we did to Colin Kaepernick and all these things."
NFL was
baseball
and it's just
teams.
like BLM
NASCAR.
just took a huge leap
NASCAR.
forward, and it's like, oh my gosh, is that all it took?
But the thing people need to realize is Black Lives Matter isn't about black people's lives.
It's not.
Hey,
at
they
all.
changed their
It's not.
about page
It's
though.
literally just a name.
But hey, they used to be like Marxist, and they used to be like
No, they are
taking down the patriarchy. But I'm saying their website used to explicitly state that.
website, yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
saying they recently changed
Because
it.
people have
which
been
is,
calling them out.
Yeah,
But-
And
well,
realizing that.
you know,
And
there's
now-
still those people
And
there.
now because that massive traction that they got, they don't want to lose followers, so they're going to remove that out of the image they're putting out.
But
But,
there's-
behind that's still what's driving
Yeah.
them.
and it's
That's why they all talk about tearing down the system. We're going to tear down the system and
Right.
rebuild it. What are you going to rebuild it
Hey,
to?
a global reset.
Socialism and communism.
and this is the thing though. We see the manifestation in the physical realm, but behind it are demons and spirits, right?
Right, on the spiritual side.
So
just like matter and antimatter, there's the physical and there's the spiritual.
right. So even with this whole BLM and just taking this huge leap forward and people just being, I think, think and believe, and I think it's very true, that what we're seeing, what we see in the physical realm is always behind it is the spiritual. So I think there's an increase in spiritual activity, demonic activity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what's driving
Very
all
plausible.
this change.
For sure.
That's really what's driving all this change,
For sure. And
that's the dangers. That's also, I was going to bring emotion back into it because I had a point on that, but I kind of forget what I was going to say on that.
well, with that being said, when we talk about disliking something like Black Lives Matter, it's the ideology that we hate. Just like a Christian hates sin, not the sinner.
Yeah.
We don't
Very good point.
We don't hate people, no matter who they are, even Joe Biden.
We love people. We want
Or
to live in
Bernie.
peace
Sorry
with all
for him.
people.
He has Alzheimer's or dementia, and
honest-
he was on some Adderall or something.
I think they
man.
drugged him up for the debate.
But back to what we were saying,
He's
it's
kinda
not
lost
about hating
sometimes.
the people. It's about hating the ideology. And what's driving that ideology? The demonic forces, a sinful nature. And
know
that's what we hate.
Do you know what
Yes.
I've said?
And that's what we don't want.
Yeah.
I've said this before. If you want to look at who truly are the most powerful people in the world, right? You could say
Illuminati.
the Illuminati, Rothschild,
The
I don't know,
Bilderbergs.
Freemasons.
Freemasons.
I mean, you could say a lot of things,
Trilateral
and
Commission.
that's all.
The
Conspiracy
Council on
theories.
Foreign Relations.
But
CFR.
one thing that I've thought about is honestly
The Federal Reserve.
the philosophers of this world are the most. Like if you look at
Yes.
they like with the postmodernists, it oftentimes takes decades maybe to see.
And it has.
It takes decades to see what their work and beliefs translate and look like in the real world once they're adopted as like a personal belief. But
It takes decades to
it's
manifest.
tremendous amount of change that happens when those ideas are adopted.
Yes.
Like if you can look at any type of philosophy, even in ancient times, as some people say incorrectly, ancient times. In ancient times, like what is it called? Hedonism. That's an ancient philosophy that influenced how people live their lives. I'm just saying that I think is...
I want to be happy.
That's the true, I think, power in people. If you can change the way they view the world and their ideologies via... a lot of times it's philosophy, and it just kind of seeps into pop culture after that.
Well, the way you
That's
think
everything.
will determine the way you live.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If I have if I believe and think biblically, sincerely, like, which repentance means metanoia, the changing of the mind. So repentance starts with the changing of the mind, right? Why? Because like you said, that's the most powerful thing. If I change the way I think, then I'll live differently. If I actually think that this is sin and that I'm going to be punished for it and go to hell for it if I don't repent, then I'm not going to do that. Whereas if I believe in relativism, postmodernism, there's no truth, it's my truth, I can do whatever I want, then I'll live however I want and I'll please myself with whatever I want, right?
Yeah.
Like sin doesn't exist for me. I just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
So it's the way I think determines the way I live.
Yeah.
That's the most powerful, I agree.
Oh, by
Definitely
far.
thought. And
Philosophy.
that's what drives certain people to success, is their mindset, the way they think, or that's what drives them into
Very good
being
point.
impoverished,
Very good point.
being mentally tied
It's hard, bro.
down.
It's hard to have that, because I think a lot of it is, to be successful,
But not even success, health. There's so
Yeah,
many people
I'm
out
just
there
saying-
that they have the mentality, oh, I'm going to catch this, I'm going to catch that. And they're always looking up symptoms online because they always think they're sick. And then they end up getting sick because they keep thinking they're sick.
Well, even just that affects mental health too.
Yeah.
Like if you're thinking and your mind's not right, you go into depression, you go into schizophrenia, paranoia.
You could
I don't know what else.
You could be sick, and if you are, if you have the right mindset, it won't hinder you as much, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think, what was I gonna say? Shoot, this happened last time
Success.
too.
No,
Just the way you think.
I like what you said there with, the way you think can either make you successful or make you into a failure. You know?
Yeah.
And
Because if you believe mentally that you will be successful, every time you fail, you look at it as just
A learning opportunity.
or like an obstacle that you just got to get out
it's
of
the
your
way
way.
you look at it.
Yeah. But if you look at yourself as a failure
And I'm always putting myself down.
and you go to try something new, like, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get myself out of here. And then you look at yourself as a failure and then you go do it. Like, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get myself out of here. And you fail.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that just proves my mentality that I'm a failure.
Bro, it's
So
hard
I-
to be
so I
tough.
do
It's
suck.
hard to be tough on yourself. Like,
it is.
It's hard.
That's
to,
the hardest thing.
It's
and
hard
that's
to be
why,
disciplined. It's hard to just.
That's why society is where it's at right now, because it doesn't look at itself like, hey, I'm going to do
There's
better.
no introspection today, right?
It's not like I'm
There's
going
no
to do better.
discipline.
I'm going to
I'm
be
the
better.
victim.
I'm going to be the good Samaritan in this culture. They don't look at it like that. They look at, you need to provide for me because I can't do it myself.
So I don't need to better myself.
Or
I
not
don't need
that-
to
not
discipline
that I-
you
myself,
need to provide
right?
welfare for us because we're poor.
Not that I can't do it. It's I can't do it because you
Of
guys
you.
aren't
X,
letting
Y,
me
or
do
Z.
it too. A lot
Yeah.
of times you
Or
guys are
that.
oppressing me, right? There's people in power who.
And we're not talking about like the Black Lives Matter thing right now. We're just talking about the ideology of the loony left or this crazy socialism push.
Do you
that's
know
happening.
what? And so I heard this before, Ben Shapiro or someone. He said that if you look at, I think it's the Brookings Institute, which is, he was saying, I don't know much about them, but he was saying this is a liberal like organization, a liberal think tank, whatever institution it is, it's liberal. But he said that there are 3 things that predict with like a very high degree of accuracy whether or not you're going to live in poverty.
Yeah.
And he said those 3 things are if you graduated from high school, did you have children out of wedlock? Like did you wait until you were married to have kids? And then are you employed full time? He said, if you have your high school diploma, if If
you wait until marriage to have kids,
children, if you have a full-time job, you're
almost
not living in
guaranteed
poverty.
to not live in poverty.
Like, it's super high percentage.
Yeah.
And I think that's very alarming because, to be successful, clearly you need to have some type of foundation, some type of a support structure, which is a family, clearly, which is somewhat of an education, as bad as high school educations now are these days. And to be employed, clearly.
And one thing
and it work. I mean, I'm full time. I'm
kind of building on that. One thing Jonathan said last podcast is that even if you end up becoming, those are based on the society that we live in today, impoverished versus in our culture, America. But even the more impoverished people that live in America live a far better life than impoverished people outside of America, especially in like second, third world countries.
Yeah, let's say you're...
To a degree, you still need to be thankful. And that's something that I love what Gary Vee pushes. For those of you who know Gary Vaynerchuk, he always pushes, no matter where you're at, just be grateful.
Yeah.
Just be grateful, man.
I was going to say
that's what drives you.
The reason why I think...
Once you get a negative mindset, you're done.
The reason why I think there's a lot of this hatred toward the ultra rich is because it's kind of like, we talked about this on the first time. It's kind of like if you social media, how you're comparing yourself to everyone else that you're seeing about, hey, they go on this many vacations, this places. You feel like you're being left out. In the same way, nowadays, it's like you're not even comparing yourself to your neighbor anymore. You're comparing yourself to Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates.
Some oddball.
Hundreds of billions of dollars. And you're like, I don't have hundreds of billions, you get pissed.
And not even that. You also compare yourself to these maybe fake accounts, maybe people who put out a fake image on social media.
They go onto a plane, a private plane that that's
like you mentioned last time with Dan Bilzerian possibly being
and that's
fake.
the thing is, if you're like, who cares about those people? I'm making 40 grand. I can live okay in this country.
I got 5 acres. I got a house.
I know that I'm in the top 1% of the world.
Yeah.
I may not be in this country, but that's fine. I'm living comfortably here.
Well, that's another thing a lot of people haven't had the experience of, is what poverty is really like in other countries. Like, and I'm not even talking about people here who deal with poverty, because that's still something that in such a wealthy nation, we should be able to help out the ones who are actually in poverty, but not just like keep them there, help them get out of it. The thing is, these other people who are like hardcore calling for welfare, like, let's make a socialist state.
Not even that. The worst is reparations.
They've never even
that's the worst one.
They've never, those kind of people, you can tell, have never been to these outside countries who deal with like actual issues.
Well, look at our parents and our parents' generation. They came from that.
Yeah.
They worked hard, man.
Yeah, and they got nothing for it.
They have work ethic.
Yeah.
And they came here and they worked hard.
Yeah, and a lot of them built crazy businesses. I'm not saying all of them, but like we have
they all did decent.
Yes.
We have a few two uncles here in the States who did really well.
Yeah.
An uncle in Canada who did amazing.
Right.
And actually multiple uncles in Canada who did great.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're talking about people that are making millions.
Yeah, we're talking about millions.
And then all the other ones, they're well off. They're doing good. They started from zero.
And like, there's a ton of people in Chicago, a ton of Romanians in Chicago who are just killing it. They own like granite companies. They own construction companies. And they own all sorts of stuff.
You know what's crazy though is that they say, oh,
that's just from the hard work.
With the reparations. Like we were dealt a bad hand.
Oh man.
Well, we were stripped of generations of wealth.
Is the line they use.
Well, our parents started from zero. They were stripped from everything.
Yeah.
And they still made it. Yeah. It's all the mindset.
Technically, if we want to jump into that mindset, we can too. You and I, we were all stripped of our
There's only one generational
wealth.
Do you know what I heard? I heard someone say
because
this.
Our parents had to come to America.
They were asking for reparations for all black people, right? And some guy said that this isn't just for people who are descendants of slaves, right? This is just for black people in the United States. And this one guy was saying,
which is like a false truth because a lot of black people in America, their descendants weren't even slaves in America.
This is what he's saying.
There are.
This
but
one
not
guy was
all of
saying,
them.
hey, if I am a Jamaican or if I'm from the Caribbean, and I'm black, and my ancestors were not slaves, I come here
And I get
reparations just because I'm black. I'm like, everyone loves free money, but
that causes? That causes
free
laziness.
money is never free.
Yeah,
that causes laziness, and then that causes a bigger welfare program, and that causes socialism, and then which leads to communism. It's happened over and over in so many countries. That guy Patrick David that I was telling you about, I saw the title on a clip he put out. I still have to watch. I haven't watched it yet, but the title of the clip said
the Harbinger guy. You said
that's who he was interviewing.
Valuetainment.
Oh, that's Patrick.
Yeah.
Oh, I know
That's
that
Patrick
guy, the
David.
Iranian.
Yeah. The title of the clip was something along the lines like what my plan, how my plan, or like taxing the poor, how that would help America. Like imagine if
tax them so much, make them work.
Yeah, exactly. They actually end up getting taxed. Now they have to pay. Otherwise, they could end up going to jail, which kind of forces them to get to work. And I gotta watch it. I have no idea the idea behind it. I haven't
good if
watched
there are
the video.
employment opportunities, right?
I just looked at the title, and that gave me like a good idea to a certain degree. Once again, if people are actually poor and they're working on getting themselves out of there, those people need help. Yeah,
do you
sure,
know,
don't tax them. But these like lazy poor people that just sit home all the time and just collect welfare, they need to be taxed.
A good quote that I heard.
Aren't looking for an employment opportunity too. That's
right. Especially if they're able to be employed.
So there's a really good quote that I heard. I might have said it before to one of you guys. It goes something like this: like, hard times create good men. Good men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. And it's a vicious cycle. The hard times create good men create good times create good times create good weak men, and weak men. It's just a vicious cycle.
Well, we can kind of look at that a little bit, kind of unfolding before our eyes. Like, you could kind of look at our parents' generation.
Or strong men, not good men, strong men.
You can look at like our parents' generation as strong men leaving where they left, putting up with all the difficulties.
We're not as strong as them mentally too.
Right.
Oh,
we're not.
And then you can look at our generation as
We're not.
millennials. We had it good. We lived in good times, and a lot of millennials are pretty weak.
Yeah.
Mentally.
Snowflakes even.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect name that's been used.
And I'll admit, which
created bad times. Like, look where we're at and where we're headed.
And it's gonna get worse before it gets better.
And what do they say about like what's the newest generation?
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
I don't know if I don't know where I would fall in. I think I'm like right at the transition between millennial and Gen Z.
Last I looked, or last I've heard about it, Gen Zs are fairly conservative, right? From what I've heard.
Isn't it?
It's very interesting.
Generation X, Y, Z, and
no, it's baby boomers, Generation X, millennial,
and then
Z. I think Generation Y is like what's happening now, like what.
Oh, because they're all confused and saying why?
Yeah, why?
Those are all kids,
bro. Let me about this. Maybe I'll share this about this. Being weak or strong mentally or mental, mental strength, because like I said, I'll admit, and I think you guys will agree with me. Even though we're not snowflakes, we're not as strong as our parents' generation.
Right. I feel like we're kind of in between.
Yeah. Anyways, this kind of stems out of other reasons for me, and maybe I'll get to this eventually sometime on the podcast and kind of say what happened, but it has to do with my health,
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I started, because I wasn't working after I graduated university for like a year and a half, And I went through a lot of really hard times that tried me mentally and emotionally and physically and everything, you know. And I'm still not home free from this, at least physically. But I remember once I started my job, I would quote unquote make mistakes, mess up here and there, you know, especially at the beginning, you're new. They weren't crazy big mistakes. The reaction mentally that I had wasn't normal. Like if I wouldn't have went through what I went through, I wouldn't have had these thoughts. I would have been like, oh, okay, whatever. Because like right now I don't. It was more only at the beginning. I would like mess up and I'd beat myself, man. Like mentally, I'd be like, you're so stupid, man. You can't even do this. You're retarded. You're like, you're not good at anything. I'd be telling myself this, you know, I'd put myself down big time, you know? So like that was a big struggle. I struggled with that at the beginning and it was like, it wasn't a hard job.
Yeah.
But no matter how hard the job or easy the job, you're going to make mistakes here and there, you know?
Right. Yeah. 100%.
And I would always put myself down so much. Now, if I make a mistake here and there.
You're saying you're tying that into the weak men?
No, I'm tying that in the mental strength.
Oh, okay.
Because weak men, I wouldn't say that's because weak men, because the source of that mindset that I had was something else. It was my health, you know. And
right.
you guys know this more, and I don't want to get into it really right now. But now, I mean, I make a mistake, whatever, doesn't even enter my mind, those thoughts, you know?
Yeah.
But it was because
what you learned
I was so tried. It was such a trying period and tough period of my life.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously there's this.
Yeah, when you go through
this spiritual aspect to, you know,
when you go through difficult times in life, I mean, a lot of times you just beat yourself up about everything, right? It's like because
it was like
I think a lot of times when you go through difficult times in your life, you just get this feeling that your life's falling apart, even though it may not be, and you just you're like, man, my life's falling apart, even though,
and then something
for
that
the most part it's not,
and then something that might have been a non-issue,
and this was
even though it might be a little bit negative, non-issue becomes like a big issue because
this was non-issue. On top. This was non-issue.
Yeah, I'm saying,
I would beat myself down. You know?
You felt like let's say you felt your life was falling apart, and you're like, you messed up at work. You're like, I'm not even proficient at the simplest of things, right?
And it's not like now I don't mess up here and there, but that doesn't even pass through my mind.
Right. I think everyone deals with that too, because like I've dealt with that in raising my family and running a business and all that. All that kind of stuff too. Just thinking at points like,
I'm good for nothing. Like, what am I doing?
Like, this is stuff I've even thought of recently. Like, hey, I'm 30 years old. I just turned 30 not long ago.
I got nothing to show for it or whatever.
Okay, I got a house.
I'm talking for myself.
Right. I got a house. I got 3 kids. I feel like I'm not much further than when I first got married, which was not much further other than obviously having a wife.
It's like each time is not much further, you know? Yeah.
Than when I was younger. But like if I would sit there and make a list of stuff like
and just dwell on it, you'd be
if I'd make a list of things I've accomplished now versus what I had accomplished, you know, in my mid to late teens, there'd obviously be a difference.
Right.
But mentally you're sitting there like I'm not anywhere further.
Anywhere near.
At least nowhere near where I want to be or I would have wanted to be at this point.
That's the thing. It's
and
like
then you really like beat yourself up.
You can always look at yourself and just say, hey, I'm not anywhere near I need to be or where you could be, right?
Right.
Because I think we all look at ourselves and say, hey, we are men and women of potential.
Yeah.
And
like it is possible for me to be here, to be at that point.
A lot of times we feel like, hey, we're not living to our potential. Like, if we live to the best we could be, and whatever sense you want to talk, like spiritually, financially, career-wise, like
family,
and I think that's where the great struggle is, right? You can't live 100% and be the best, be 100% on top of your game in so many different areas of your life.
Yeah,
and you have to realize that, hey, I can't be 100% at work and family and interest and hobbies and all these things. I can dial it back and maybe invest 70% of my energy in multiple ways, but I can't.
I think the important part in all this is, what are you going to do when those thoughts and when those moments, those low moments in life come? What are you going to do?
Right.
Are you going to sit there?
You're going to give in to them?
Or are you going to fight?
Yeah. You're going to pick yourself back
there's
up.
one thing that I can say God has taught me. You got to fight.
Yeah. You can't ever give up.
You don't give up. You pick yourself up and you go.
And a lot of people talk about that as being like an American value, the core of America, which
value.
it
American
is.
tradition.
But it's a godly value.
But the reason it is an American thing is because America was founded on God and God's principles.
Right. So how do you get back up, man?
And that is the core of God.
Do you know how you get back up though? By going down on your knees.
Right.
If you want to overcome certain battles in life, and it doesn't matter what the battle is.
Figuratively speaking, you don't have to literally like sit on your knees all the time.
Of course, figuratively, yeah.
Just
what I mean
surrender.
is an active surrender towards God and a prayer life, right?
Yeah.
If you want to beat and win at life, and that doesn't mean, like, success can be measured in so many different ways. Success for me isn't being a millionaire for me.
Right.
You know, success is measured it for each person differently.
Yeah.
But if you want to get past those valleys, like get through the valleys and get back up, you got to fight on your knees in prayer. And that battle can be mentally, it can be spiritually, it can be physically, it can be financially, familial, like the family life.
It could be all of them.
It could be all of them. The key to success, the key to getting back up and being successful and winning those battles is God.
I think, I think
fight and don't give up.
Submitting to his will.
There's a balance though, because
and understanding that your success isn't necessarily what you want it to be.
Yes.
A lot of times, even though we all want to we all have our ideas of our own success, but sometimes God's will for us is different.
And one more thing before you add, Alex, that, what I said, pray, you submit to God, you seek his will, but you do not remain passive.
Right.
Do it.
100%.
Do it.
I was going to say something along along those lines, because I think
take
it's
action.
A lot of times people just, they just say, just pray or just do this,
and then they sit doing nothing.
I think there is a great amount of responsibility on your part to pick yourself up by the bootstraps, right?
Yeah.
You yourself have to go out and say, hey, I want to change. I want this. I
need to do this. I need to do
want
that.
a better,
I need to let go of that.
I want to be a better father. I want to be a better whatever.
So be active in that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you have to make a conscious effort, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't expect it. I think people expect that, if they pray, things will just magically fall into place.
Which that is a form of socialism. I'm going to pray to God.
I don't have to do anything.
I don't have to do anything. And
God does it.
And he's just going to give it to me.
You could say it's of the same mindset.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual socialism, I guess.
A form of socialism. Yeah. Your mentality.
Like, you have to make a great conscious effort.
For sure.
On your part.
A biblical
That's
example.
What capitalism is.
A biblical example comes up. I remember speaking from this text before. Eleazar, one of David's mighty men. They go to battle, right? And they have to, I think it was like in a field or something. And all the Israelites, all the, the army and stuff, they get scared and they leave.
They draw back.
This guy, Eleazar, doesn't.
By himself.
He fights. It says that.
What a hero.
It says that at the end of the battle, his hand got stuck to his sword, and
gripping it so hard, probably.
Gripping it so hard in the blood and all that. And
his
it dried,
forearms, though.
And it dried and it was stuck to his sword, right? Do you know what it says there? It says, but he fought, and it says that the Lord gave the victory. Right. But Eleazar didn't draw back.
Yeah.
Okay, Lord, you fight. No.
Exactly.
He did his part. but God gave him the victory. He was with him, you know?
Yeah.
And then after that, it's so crazy. After that, the people who drew back come back and take part of the spoils. They're like, Eliezer did all of it, and you know, let's be rich on his back now, you know, take the spoils. But the point of that story, like connecting it to this, is that you have to fight, you have to do your part, but you recognize that God gives the victories.
100%.
Right? And that God helps. You seek him.
Yeah.
And you do not give up. That sword got stuck to his hand, man.
That's part of you.
That's part of you.
Yeah.
That's the battle.
You don't stop.
You
don't
do
stop
not
swinging
give
that
up.
thing.
You keep going. And dude, I mean, you guys can probably say this too, but there's been like times where just like you just want to give up spiritually, financially, like all
life,
of it,
maybe,
you know, and life,
emotionally, looking for a wife.
yeah, all of
right.
it. And you're just like, you just want to give up, and you're like, I'm done. I have no more strength in me.
Yeah.
I've come to the end of myself. I've come to my limits. And God's like, no, you keep going. I'm with you. I'll help you. You know,
And
just keep going.
But
There's
you
not
know,
much
to
left.
get to that point, I think that's where the point of surrender happens, right? Because personally, I've got to those moments where you feel like, you know, end of the road, you know. You get the life,
done.
your life's falling apart sensation, you know. You throw your hands up in the air and you begin to panic. But the only solution to that, like you were saying, is when you surrender, right? That's when you get down on your knees. But you know, and it's so weird because I feel like a lot of times it's just like it can be cyclical, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It does, and something.
It's hard to stay consistent because you always find yourself drifting back to the you know, your life's falling apart, you know, everything's
you surrender
going
again.
wrong.
You get back up,
and you have to find that consistency because otherwise,
very good point.
It's always hot and cold your life, you know.
An old youth pastor,
maturity.
Old youth pastor of mine. Maybe you were around early. You were in your early youth back then, back in Canada. You guys know him, Cornell Burka.
Yeah.
Shout out to him if he ever listens to this. He said something that really stuck with me. That really goes with what Alex was just saying. The cyclical thing. Because I would tell him about like my spiritual life. Like sometimes I feel like I'm like everything's on the up and up, and then other times I feel like it's all coming crashing down. And he's like, that's how life happens. Like think about it as a roller coaster, like a roller coaster ride, not an indefinite, but your whole life is a roller coaster ride from beginning to end.
Right.
A roller coaster ride goes up and down, but the overall view of the roller coaster ride is in an upwards trajectory.
It's like a bull market on the stock graph.
Right. For those of you who trade.
Traders.
Some of us are traders. It's an up and down motion as you're going up.
Yeah.
So you get those crashes, you get those highs, so to speak.
And
but
sometimes
it's a general upward trajectory.
And sometimes you get a COVID crash where it's like, it just plummets, and then you get a V-shaped recovery. And it's sick, and you just keep going up, you know.
And you make bank, you know.
And you make like a 500%.
And you're just
return.
on the mountain, you know.
No,
yeah.
But that's how God works too. Sometimes we crash so hard, and then we get to that point of surrender Alex is talking about, and then God comes around, and He's like, "Here you go, because you surrendered. Here's the reward to that." Sometimes, not always.
I mean, dude,
but sometimes, and you're like, and then you get to that like high. Where you're like, oh, God, thank you so much. I don't even deserve this.
I know. The goodness of God.
Yeah.
And then what does the goodness of God? It says the goodness of God teaches us to repent.
Yeah.
Romans chapter 2.
Yeah.
You know? Because you're like, man, I don't deserve this. Wow. I got to get closer to God. Like, He is so good.
And not everyone does that.
Right.
Sadly.
Absolutely.
Some people are like, oh, I'm doing good. Let's go party. Or whatever, you know?
Dude.
And they forget all about God.
But I don't know how long you want to go.
Good times, weak men at that point.
Yeah.
But listen, one thing that's really uplifting, another scripture example, Peter. He's like, he tells Jesus, I'm going to go to death, you know? Jesus is like, no, tonight, not in a month, not in a week, tonight. Before the rooster crows twice, you're going to
deny me thrice.
3 times. You know, and he denies Christ
3 times.
3 times. But Jesus says after that, After you get back up, go strengthen the brothers. And then when Peter denies, it says that his eyes meet Jesus' eyes. And Jesus' eyes like told him something, not judgmental. I love you.
And then he ran away crying,
And then it says that he went away and he cried with bitterness.
Because he realized what he did.
But what happens after that? Christ rehabilitates him, asks him 3 times. He denied him 3 times. He asked him 3 times, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And then Peter, he comes back and he's one of the strongest apostles and strongest.
That's Peter's
witnesses.
whole life, though. I feel
Yeah.
like up until that point, though, is
Up and down.
just full, of ups
Yeah.
and downs.
I bet you even afterwards it was up and down.
There
Yeah,
was
there was. He was being hypocritical.
with Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Paul was there and Paul called him out on it. Yeah.
But ultimately his overall trajectory was up.
Yeah. And he
Yeah.
was, one of the strongest believers to ever walk the earth.
He was the first pope, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's what the Catholic or the Orthodox Church
No,
considers, or
the Catholic
Catholic Church, they consider him.
is the first pope.
Yeah, so moral of the story is no matter how, denying Jesus is not a small thing.
No, that's a pretty big, that's one of the biggest
That's
things.
the
really.
biggest thing.
It's almost like saying I don't know, I forget how you say in English, like hulam podziwu.
Yeah,
to
That's
an extent.
blasphemy.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
form of blasphemy, yeah.
So it doesn't matter how low you go, man. And I'm not, this example isn't just spiritual. It can be work. It can be, for anyone listening out there, man, you don't give up. You keep going. You're going to make it, man.
Oh, yeah.
And don't look at success as just financial,
Right.
right?
Because
that's
one
what
statistic is some of the happiest people are not financially rich.
Because that's what society and social media wants you to believe.
Yeah.
Success is financial.
Material
It's not,
worth, right?
Yeah.
It's, having the blessing of God in your family life, being happy and thankful and grateful for your job and your money that you make and your spiritual life. And
that's
serving
one of the
Lord,
problems of, living here is you always gauge success on your wealth, right?
Yeah.
And it's not I would think that you get to 65, you hit your retirement age, right? And you may feel successful if you have 5 million waiting for you, right, to enjoy in the latter half of your latter days, right? Or however much you have left. But I would imagine that if your kids are, addicted to cocaine and heroin, and you've maybe lost some who are to ODing, and your family life is in just utter
in
ruins, right? You're divorced. Who knows? I would think that you wouldn't feel that successful, even with 5 million waiting for you to enjoy yourself, of it in your retirement years. You would not feel successful.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we need to think about. Is hey, success isn't just wealth.
Yeah.
It's the full package, because there's the saying, health is wealth. Having a good family. I would think that's hugely important too.
Strong straight arrows in your quiver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to put 10 in there. God willing.
You go up to the gate and the enemy's afraid of you. Anyways, about what were you just saying?
Retirement and money and
What is wealth?
Being successful. It starts at the mindset, like we said. And I was going to tie something to that. That it's not just wealth. Man, I forgot what I was going to say.
Health.
I was saying
situation.
about the, if you're 65 and you have millions to enjoy your retirement years.
It's all about how you manage, be it your time, and because we're talking financial right now, kind of how you manage your money.
Yeah.
You can, so.
I need to do a better job, guys.
Yeah.
I'm terrible.
We're all there.
Anyways, we can all do a better job.
Thanks to my wife. She does a pretty good job.
We need to get Dave Ramsey over here to teach us.
Right. Well, our cousin, Chris Ciot, he told me this a while back, and
shout out to him. I'm sure he's gonna listen.
I hope.
You like the page?
Oh yeah. So he told me this once. He had 2 buddies in Michigan. One of them was making like maybe 200, 250K a year, You couldn't tell that he was making that. Spending money, didn't have nothing to show for it. Big spender, didn't manage it well. Another one of his buddies was making like 60, 70K a year. Nice car, not too fancy. I think ultimately he paid off his house. Doing well. One guy was successful, one wasn't.
Which one?
Right? Which one?
Listeners.
Which one? You tell me.
Which one was successful?
What does that tell me? You know, that tells me that making $300K a year doesn't mean I'm successful.
Right.
Making 60 and managing it is successful. Making 300 and not managing it.
Successful.
Financially successful.
This is what's successful. Right. Asking God to give you wisdom.
Yes.
That's success.
That's the root of it, isn't it? That's the root of it.
Because one was wise, one was not.
Right.
One built his house on the sand, one built it on a rock.
Yeah.
One succeeded when the storm came, one didn't.
I've always liked the Solomon's when he is approached in a dream. I've always loved his answer and his sincerity.
He had to have some wisdom to even respond like that.
And he says, you know, how can I, a young man who has not tried, judge and lead a nation so great? You know, give me wisdom.
Yeah.
And that's just incredible, right? Acknowledging that, you know, you're limited as a person and asking for help.
That's crazy.
From God.
Well,
even though I'm sure, I mean, King's son, he was well educated. He could have.
I mean, you needed a little bit of wisdom to ask for wisdom.
Right.
Right.
The smarter, the smarter you get, the dumber you realize you are. They say.
But it's so crazy.
It's true. 100%.
Okay, you ask for riches, but you don't know how to manage it.
Yeah.
Okay, you ask for wisdom, you know how to manage this, that. You know how to make more
money.
money.
How to attain wisdom.
You know how to
create riches.
more riches. You know how to do all of that.
Yeah.
Wisdom's the root. You know. Yeah.
Well, on that note,
we did good this time.
Yeah. I mean, the ultimate,
an hour 40.
I enjoyed it, man.
Finishing off on staying strong, making it through it, because you guys will.
Yeah.
Not the listeners. You know, whenever you get in those lows, remember that the highs are coming too.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, we had a good time. I think I enjoyed it.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks to my brothers for coming out. Quick little announcement on changes towards the podcast. I'm inviting some co-hosts on, which Narcis is one of them, and I asked him to co-host with me, and he said he'd be down. And I asked Alex too. He's still
questioning, but I'm not questioning my gender, so that's good.
Yeah. And I asked one other person too. He knows who he is. If he says yes, you guys will meet him anyways.
So hopefully
he'll be on the podcast.
Every episode you'll have at least another co-host, basically, so you can
just to kind of help evolve more topics,
get your rhythm going to
maybe they'll see something from a perspective I won't.
Yeah.
Let's see what people say too.
And
others.
It's all about the discussion, right?
Yeah.
It's easier to have a discussion with maybe 3-4 people versus like one-on-one, which is still good one-on-one.
One-on-one. Think about it like this too.
It's more dynamic.
Yeah.
Between 3 people.
Think about
it's like 2D versus 3D.
Yeah. You also have to take this in account. Not every episode has to be an hour or 2 hours.
Oh no!
Sometimes you could even do a half-hour
when
episode.
There's much grace or hot, as they say, you can go like a Alex Jones 4 hours 40 minutes.
Dude, listen. Sometimes if it's half hour, it's half hour.
Oh, for sure. You know? And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm not limiting myself or the podcast, and I'm not
let it free.
I'm not pushing it either. Like it's not like we have to get 2 hour long. Or,
right. Flow how it goes. You know.
Yeah. Whatever it goes.
Depends on the chemistry too, and obviously we have a lot of chemistry as brothers. So,
yeah. But shooting that out there just to kind of give you guys an update on that. And then other than that, we'll see you guys on the next episode. God bless you guys, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.